Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
And welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen.
And let me be the first to interrupt and remind each and every one of you that I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to be the first to welcome you to Cowboy Logic Radio. Boy, have we got a riveting big show for you, ladies and gentlemen.
A really big shoe.
And we are brought to you by no one. And let me tell you what that means, ladies and gentlemen. It means nobody is paying any money to help us pay for this show. And as a result, we are accountable to no one. Back to you, Donna.
I like it that way. You know, there's some things that you just have to miss when you grow up in the New York area.
Let me guess what one is.
What is?
I'm going to guess that you have to miss Rosie O'Donnell in a bathtub.
No, that's not one of them. Try again.
Let me guess number two. What is it you have to miss growing up in New York?
Yeah. Something you don't get, unfortunately, down here in Atlanta. I mean, you could, but you'd have to look it up online. It's not the same.
Oh, I know.
What's that?
John Kerry in a bathtub.
No, I don't get it. What's the bathtub thing? Kerry's Boston.
Yeah, but he goes to New York because he goes down to New York to meet with the Iranian people.
That's true.
So that he can go in through the back door.
And undermine the president of the United States.
Undermine the Trump administration. All right, well, let me keep guessing. Ask me the question again.
Okay, what do I really miss about New York City? I look forward to it. I used to look forward to it every day on the way into work. Fox News
New
Channel,
York
Fox
attorney
5,
generals
NBC.
that are Me Too advocates that have just been busted.
Well, that's one of them. That's part of it. But the bigger picture is the headlines of the New York Post.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? We can't get those down here.
Well, you have to look it up online. It's just not the same. You got to have the paper sitting on your desk, you know, because it used to get
you were on that, were you not?
Fox. Yeah, when I resigned actually from flying traffic in the helicopter after
That's what we have hanging up in the hallway, right?
Yes, it's kind of yellowed now because it didn't seal up very
but it's
well.
still, what's it say? Donna Fiducia hangs up her wings?
Yes, Donna hangs up her wings after having mucho, really serious, what they call precautionary landings. Sorry, folks, they're emergencies. When you lose a transmission over the UN and the East River, and you're looking at that current going 80 gazillion miles an hour.
With hypodermic needles floating in it. It's like falling into like a briar patch.
And you have a phenomenal New York City police officer who flew, basically moonlighted with me in the afternoons when he flew in the morning and had a gazillion hours, and his name was Heinz Grauman, the best pilot you could ever want. And he nursed that thing with no transmission over the UN, over the East River, over the 59th Street Bridge, and landed it in left field of a softball game, and everybody scattered. And he put it down so nicely that I said to him afterwards, what are you going to do? Just check everything and take off again? Because something's wrong, but it didn't seem that bad. He goes, we ain't going anywhere, honey.
Now, when that was taking place, because you've told me these stories many times, and we've talked about some of the things that happened when you were in the helicopter up in New York. But when you were in that particular situation, did you have any idea the severity of it?
In this particular case, I thought I was going to die. I'll be honest with you, I was 26 years old. I thought I was going to die. And that, not the exact same helicopter, but very similar model, was the one that Jane Dornacker died in October of 1986. I had 1,500 hours in that helicopter, and that was when I decided to quit. And the New York Post put me on the front page saying Donna hangs up her wings. But
you were absolutely, and you're adorable now. But you're adorable.
Yeah, but I look like Marissa Tomei and my cousin Vinny back then with the big.
Well, all right,
dark,
give us a little give us a little Marissa. Come on.
I bet the Chinese food here is terrible.
Very good, Donna.
But you
and actually, we're searching for a new Chinese restaurant, ladies and gentlemen, out in West Georgia. We have been to a few, and I'm not going to name them. That would be unprofessional of me. But if any of you in West Georgia are listening to this, send me an email, cowboylogicradio@gmail.com. Cowboylogicradio@gmail.com. And please suggest to me, and Donna for that matter, your favorite Chinese restaurant in West Georgia, because we'd like to check it out.
How do we get to Chinese restaurants from helicopter
Because you were
crashes?
talking like Marissa Tomei.
Okay. But there is actually a book that the New York Post put out called The Best Headlines from America's Favorite Newspaper. And
They are
number
priceless.
one is, that the New York Post has is Headless Body in Topless Bar. And that actually is the title. But as I look through it, there's a whole bunch back from the early 1990s that actually have Donald Trump. One actually shows him and his wife at the time, Ivana Trump, and it says, guess who shops at Kmart? It shows a picture of Trump and Ivana in a Kmart parking lot. I mean, but the thing is, what I'm trying to get to is today, back up to modern times, folks, there is a New York City Attorney General named Eric Schneiderman.
There was one.
Well, hold on. Schneiderman is a champion of the Me Too movement. He is the chief law enforcer for New York State. He hates Donald Trump. He's been trying to get Donald Trump everywhere he could. He sued Harvey Weinstein. He actually tweeted how great the women are that came out against Harvey Weinstein and how strong they were.
You see where this is going, ladies and gentlemen?
He's a classic
This is classic. This is epic.
A classic liberal Democrat has now been accused by not one, not two, not three, but 4 women of non-consensual physical violence and assault. We're not just talking having a consensual sex, hello, Stormy.
She is all forehead.
Seriously.
She's got the biggest forehead. Stormy's forehead looks like a weather front coming in.
Serious. This guy is a real slime
That was pretty
bucket.
good, don't you think, Donna?
This
a weather front. It looks like when we look out to the west on our property and you see this big, massive, bulbous storm coming in, that's what Stormy's forehead looks like.
They really need to update
And
this
her
book.
pupils, for that matter.
okay.
They're massive.
Can
They're
I
huge.
get to this?
They're huge.
These women sought medical attention. At one point, the guy slapped her. This guy, Eric Schneiderman, slapped one of these women so hard that her ear actually bled. She had to go to the doctor for it. She told the doctor, well, she punctured her eardrum with a Q-tip. Schneiderman is 63 years old. Again, he even praised the New York Times and the New Yorker magazine for winning a Pulitzer Prize for their coverage of sexual harassment by tweeting a congratulations saying, quote, the brave women and men who spoke up about sexual harassment they endured at the hands of powerful men. Without these women, there would be no critical national recognizing of this underway. And this gave his victims a little more nerve, you think, to come forward after looking
Bang!
at you
Bang!
slime ball.
Bang!
Schneiderman also...
Bang! That was
Get a
4
load
of them.
this. Okay, but listen to this. Listen to what else he did. He warned the women that he could, quote, have them followed, their phones tapped, and 2 of them say that he threatened to kill them if they broke up with him. Ooh. Yeah, so this guy
Is this guy single or
seriously-
married?
He's divorced, and his kids
Sounds
are
like his
grown.
wife figured
He's
out the
63 years
program,
old.
don't you think, Donna?
His spokesman said, well, he never made any of those threats. Well, a third woman then told the other women that she's frightened to come forward, but that Schneiderman also subjected her to non-consensual physical violence as well. And a fourth woman, who was an attorney, said Schneiderman slapped her across the face when she rebuked him and left a mark that was visible the next day. Schneiderman now said, in the privacy of intimate relationships, I have engaged in role-playing. That's what he said.
What a pervert. What a sick puke.
You remember the novelist Salman Rushdie, who had a fatwa against him? That was one of the first fatwas I ever heard of.
Right.
He's actually still alive. He is actually friends with one of these women and has been for about 15 years, corroborated what she said. So then what happens? Schneiderman, within like about 3 hours, resigns. He steps down.
Yeah,
That's it.
I have to resign.
Which
This
brings
is
me
a
back.
distraction.
Which brings me back to the New York
Let me guess.
Post.
Did he say that it was a distraction?
No, he just resigned. I don't know. But the thing is, this woman, Manning Barish, is the one who's most outspoken. She said he would drink 2 bottles of wine, then bring a bottle of scotch into the bedroom, And that's why, basically, he got kind of violent. He was under the influence of drinking.
No, stop right there.
Also,
he got violent because he is a sick puke.
Well, that's true.
Okay?
But he also,
the alcohol has nothing to do with it.
But he took tranquilizers, and he asked her to fulfill her prescription for Xanax so he could take some for himself. I love it when New Yorkers eat their own. I just love it. I saw it so much in New York City with Elliot Spitzer, again, a former AG of New York, and
who you knew,
Meyer, who I interviewed when I was at Fox 5 in New York. He is such a slime bucket. But this brings me back to the New York Post.
And what do we have, Donna?
The New York Post headlines for Schneiderman stepping down, going from the Me Too movement to showing, obviously, that this guy is a bigger slime bucket than anybody could ever imagine.
Right.
The New York Post headline is Jekyll and Schneid.
They are classic.
That is almost as good as Headless Body and Topless Bar.
You know what's cool about this and these headlines is that unlike Saturday Night Live, they continue to be funny after every year
I don't know how they do it.
year.
There was one, I'm looking through the book. There's one, remember when women were getting boob jobs for graduating?
No.
That actually was something that parents were giving their daughters for graduation presents.
I do remember that.
So the headline for the New York Post, Cup and Gown.
Hey, my boys never did that. I never offered them a breast augmentation. I never offered that as a graduation gift for either Parker or Lee.
Will you stop? When
well,
Al
did
Sharpton,
you offer it to your boys?
No, not
there.
To
you go.
boys.
So what's the deal here?
When Al Sharpton was possibly going to jail for all kinds of, wrongdoing,
he still should be going to jail.
Alcatraz was the name. Then Donald Trump is like all over this. I mean, this is going back into the 90s. So you can't tell me if he had any kind of smut they could find of him, they would have found. With
And all they'd have to do is go to that.
This is just like about 50 pages of Trump. Pee Wee Herman.
Oh, Lord.
Pee Wee unzipped. Then they show his mug shot.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a lot of fun this segment with Donna reading through a book that you're not able to look at.
Bill Clinton has Bill's bed and breakfast on Bill Clinton personally ordering White House sleepovers to woo big donors. Bill's bed and breakfast.
All right, give us one more, Donna, then we're going to move on. Come
Monica Lewinsky.
Come on, Donna.
The full Monica.
All right, one more. Come on.
Hillary Clinton saying, I don't want to be in the same room with him, let alone the same bed.
Well, I'm sure that was a mutual feeling.
The New York Post.
Hey, listen, I do want to go back to Rosie O'Donnell for a second because this past weekend, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday, but I read an article in which Rosie O'Donnell has been popped for contributing to Democrat candidates more than the legal limit allows. And it's like a half a dozen, maybe 8 to 10 of them. And she has donated money. You know, you've got a limit, and I think it's $2,700 that you're able to donate to a political candidate.
I always wonder how George Soros gets around that.
Well, he goes in through creating, like, PACs. But Rosie got popped. Rosie O'Donnell has been nailed with contributing more than she legally can to numerous candidates. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what's real interesting about this. That's the same exact thing that the Obama administration charged and prosecuted and convicted Dinesh D'Souza of. And they sent him to prison. Now, here's the deal. That's the first time any punishment to that extent for that particular crime has ever been inflicted upon an individual.
You know
Dinesh
that is
D'Souza,
weaponizing.
That's exactly what he was doing.
Yep.
All right?
Federal government
so,
weaponizing
ladies and gentlemen,
citizens.
Instead of writing to your lawmakers or writing to the president and saying Rosie O'Donnell should do time for this, just like Dinesh D'Souza, I would suggest that you all write the White House and ask President Trump to pardon Dinesh D'Souza. That would be an enormous slap in the face of the Obama administration. It would allow somebody that's a great American to once again be able to vote in our election process. Pardon Dinesh D'Souza. Anytime you make a post, put hashtag pardon Dinesh D'Souza. And if you need to do research about who this man is, go back to our archives. We've got numerous shows that he's been a guest on, as well as his producer, his director, Jerry Molen, who's a friend of ours. And Dinesh is a genuine, wonderful American who appreciates the United States and everything it stands
We've had
for.
him on the show.
That's right. He's had films that are phenomenal films. So do a little research if you don't know who Dinesh is. But most importantly, contact your lawmakers, contact your representatives and your senators, contact the White House. Pardon Dinesh D'Souza.
Absolutely. I'm going back through this book looking for more headlines.
Well, while you're doing that, let me bring something else up. Ladies and gentlemen, this show that you're listening to on Tuesday night, Donna and I are actually recording this week on Monday night. And the reason that we're doing that is we really want to study what's going on tomorrow night with the coverage about the Iran deal. We don't know at this point, and the show is airing during this, okay? We don't know what's going on and what Trump's decision is going to be.
Well, he's making his announcement at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Exactly. But
So
but I'm not even going to get home until late Tuesday night.
I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay, what's the prediction,
I'm saying
Donna?
he's going to pull it. He's going to pull it, but he's going to make the sanctions for some European countries like France, because now, Macron is his buddy. He's going to kind of wimp out on
Water down the sanctions?
That's exactly what's
Well, here's the problem. Germany and France, as well as some other countries in Europe,
both leaders
are relying so heavily on Iran for trade. They need to move away from Iran.
Yeah. And you know what? The real problem was Iran was on its knees before Barack Obama infused it with $150 billion.
Well, he infused terrorism.
He infused terrorism. He infused the mullahs as well. You got to admit.
Well, that's what the government in Iran, that's what it is.
Exactly.
It's terrorism.
Exactly.
Hey, by the way, Donna, did you, and you guys that are listening, did you guys by any chance see an article, I think it was earlier today, in which Bibi Netanyahu had Abe from Japan over and was hosting a dinner for him, and the chef, the Israeli chef, made dessert. I'm not kidding about this, in a shoe. He created
which is an insult.
Which is a massive insult to Japanese people. All right.
And
Bibi about
Middle
flipped
Eastern
his
too.
lid.
So he didn't know, though, did he? It was an honest
Bibi had
mistake.
no idea that this was and the thing is, there's pictures of it on Instagram and Facebook and whatever. But here's this black shoe and this dessert.
Could you
popping out
imagine
of
if Melania Trump had made a big faux pas like that with her big state dinner with Macron from France and his wife? The media would be all over it. You know what I want to see? I want to see this thing with Eric Schneiderman. I want to see the media being all over this the way they are with Stormy Daniels.
Well, they're not gonna.
Of course they're not.
Your little buddy from Fox, your friend Allison Camerata.
Oh, I know.
Okay, check this out. Last week.
Come on,
last
Allison.
week.
Seriously?
Yeah, exactly. Last week, she's got Valerie Jarrett on. Okay? And they're hey
The
girl,
Iranian
hey girl, hey
traitor.
girl, hey girl. Well,
Yeah.
here's what Valerie
wouldn't have done
says.
that if
They
she
were
were at
talking,
Fox.
Camerata asks her something about, the economy and how well it's doing. And the unemployment numbers.
I'm
And
not going to say Barack Obama did it.
Valerie Jarrett says, well, this is all the doing of Barack Obama.
Right.
A year and a
Well,
half
printing
later.
money, Valerie. Hey, Liz Taylor, remember how many times she got married and divorced and married and divorced?
No.
The New York Post. I do. Hey, going back to 2001, it really, this book actually shows you, again, folks, I'm reading from the New York Post, the best headlines ever. And the best one of the best was Headless Body and Topless Bar. But this is actually a book of New York Post headlines that I moved with me from New York down to Atlanta because it's so good.
I didn't even know we had this book.
Oh, it's a great book.
Where is it? Where's it been?
It's been up in our bookcase. Back in December of 2001. I mean, this is when terrorism was really starting, obviously, to be a problem. They show little kids as bombers. The little kids as bombers.
I see.
And with the Al-Qaeda thing behind them. And the title is Bombs Are Us, with the backwards R, like Toys R Us.
Mm-hmm.
It's really...
You like page 6, don't you?
Page 6 is awesome. Germany
And why don't you let
France,
the listeners know what that is instead of blowing right over
It's
that?
like the National Enquirer, but, your daily dose of the National Enquirer. And you can go online and you can find page 6 on the Post.
Does that have an index
not
or,
the same.
in the back where you can look it up by name?
Yeah, you can actually
Look up
go-
Howard Stern. See if he's in there.
No, not back here. It doesn't. The book doesn't.
Oh.
But if you actually go online, get the New York Post online, which I do, you can read page 6. It's just not the same. You got to have the paper in front of you. Look, Germany and France wimping out on Iraq. What is the title? axis of weasel. I mean, you just get, and that's
Hey, hold on a second, Donna. Time out, Donna. Time out. Ladies and gentlemen, do you realize that this is the first Cowboy Logic radio episode in which Donna is not bringing you the headlines? She's actually just reading and flipping through a book, and I, Don NEUEN, am giving you and providing you with the insightful information that you can talk about around the water cooler tomorrow. Hey, before we continue,
I think these headlines are what you want to talk about around the water.
Before we continue, we have to acknowledge a few people. Ladies and gentlemen, our digital flagship network, Talk America Radio. I encourage all of you to go to talkamericaradio.us. Check out the website. We've got fantastic contributors. We've got a fantastic network that's running 24/7, thanks to the hard work of Ron Phillips. We've got a bunch of different shows that are a lot of fun to listen to all throughout the day, including Cowboy Logic Radio, Drive Time Sit Rem, Black Man Thinking, Audrey Russo's Real Talk, and the Denise Simon Experience. So we got a bunch of them. Got the Conservative Cartel, and you got the overnight guru, Matt Bruce, that comes on from 2 to 6.
Now heard in Orlando, folks.
That's right.
Yes, moving on.
But you can listen to this all over the planet. If you travel, let's say you decide you want to travel, I don't know, say to Syria, and you can get an internet signal, you could be listening to me right now from the middle of Syria.
Isn't technology amazing?
It's amazing.
It truly is.
And I'd like to give a shout out to all of our fans and our listeners in Yemen.
Hey, Mark Levin had an awesome idea, and I'm going to, I got to give him credit where credit is due. At least 5, the way you have sanctuary cities? Why don't we have sanctuary cities for gun owners? Okay?
We do.
5 counties.
It's called Double D Ranch.
Yeah, besides that. At least 5 counties in Illinois have declared themselves sanctuary cities for gun owners, putting counties on notice. If they move on guns, you better stay out. And that really shows a lot of the real big problem between the cities and the rural areas, because the whole map is basically red if you look at it, with the exception of the cities. Yes,
that's right.
Don has his hand raised.
Well, I need to do that so I can get the attention over here.
Yes.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we've only got about a minute left, but I pulled up the listener map, and I want to do a shout out to some people. Obviously, I don't know who they are. It doesn't pop up with your name, but I can tell where you are. And right this moment, we've got listeners in Germany. We've got listeners in Israel.
How cool is that?
We've got listeners in, where is that? Peru, all over Canada, of course, all over the United States, Australia.
Wow, how cool is that?
There's a little island off of Australia. I can't tell what it is, but how you doing out there?
Wonder if it's a
you have internet.
zone.
That's impressive. You have better internet than we have at our home.
New Zealand? Do you see anybody in New Zealand?
I don't see
Trevor
anybody.
Loudon's
South
there
Africa?
Right now. I know he's listening.
South Africa. Hello,
That's
all of
Brandy
you
Richards.
down in South Africa.
Yep.
Be safe. Try to get your
Absolutely.
ability to defend yourself back in the country of South Africa.
Try to come to the United States if you can.
All right, we got to go, Donna. Who do we have coming up?
Well, I just got one more headline.
Make it quick, please.
When Trump got engaged to Melania, guess what it said?
He's marrying up.
No. Well, that too. The lady is a Trump. How cool is that? Okay, Stephen COUGHLIN is coming up. We're going to be talking about
brilliant.
Iran. He is.
He is
met him
absolutely brilliant.
At the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention. Speaking of Israel, HAGIT CANARY, our reporter from Israel after Stephen. And rounding out the show, Dan Perkins, who wrote on radical Islam, got 1.3 million views, and then was put in Facebook jail.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, Don.
What do you say we just get after it?
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you this 24/7 stream of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. We are a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. If you're able, please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. Your donation will go a long way in helping us continue to share the American voice. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the Chronicles of Lower Education with me, the Fed Up Professor. Guess what? I found a beam of light in the murkiness of academia, where the ability to reason has decayed into the lazy logic of confirmation bias, which means interpreting facts or phenomena such that they prove and confirm your own pre-existing belief. According to the Higher Education Research Institute, 88% of American professors are left or far left leaning. So our students get way biased exposure to leftist orthodoxy. That's a Greek word meaning correct opinion. Orthodoxies are dangerous because their certainty about the righteousness of their worldview leads to punishment, silencing, marginalization of anyone with opposing viewpoints. Here's an example. One of my colleagues stormed into class the morning after Trump's election and demanded that anyone who voted for him get the hell out of her classroom. Several did, and they reported her to administration. Nevertheless, that spring, she won a Professor of the Year Teaching Award. True story. But here's some hopeful news. A group of rock star academics from both sides of the spectrum are alarmed at the Academy's failure to foster actual critical thinking, and they founded an online organization called Heterodox Academy. Heterodox is Greek for different opinion. Their mission? To improve the quality of research and education in universities by increasing viewpoint diversity and constructive disagreement. What a concept! New members affirm that they agree that university life requires people with diverse viewpoints and perspectives to be free to challenge one another, and they pledge their support of viewpoint diversity in their fields, universities, departments, and classrooms. Yeah, I joined. I'm a counter-revolutionary, baby. But until further notice, I shall remain the fed-up professor. See you next week.
This is Don NEUEN, co-host of the Drive Time Sit Rep. Join me as I call in to my Intel analyst, Denise Simon, for my daily situation report, or Sit Rep, the Drive Time Sit Rep. Check talkamericaradio.us for more information and show times.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN. And our very special guest this half hour is a gentleman by the name of Stephen COUGHLIN. And we had the pleasure of introducing him and chatting with him and meeting with him at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention. Let me just give you a little background here on Stephen, folks. Boy, he's got a humongous background. Former Joint Chiefs of Staff Intel analyst, a security analyst. He is author of Catastrophic Failure, Blindfolding America in the Face of Jihad. He is an attorney, a decorated intelligence officer, and a noted specialist on Islamic law, ideology, and other issues as they relate to terrorism and subversion. Stephen COUGHLIN, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio. Great to have you back on.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, you have said in a struggle, analysis must be unconstrained by perceptions. I think that's huge. We've had a lot of people on the show with us who have tweeted things or put things on Facebook about radical Islam, and boom, they're on Facebook jail. And it's getting to the point where I think free speech is totally being constrained and perceptions are everything. What's your take on that?
Well, I will tell you, I am greatly concerned by this. As a matter of fact, I think it was 2 or maybe 3 years ago, during September's, I've been attending these things called the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, and they meet in Poland, Warsaw, Poland, where I've been attending them because what we were seeing is that Turkey, that is an OIC member, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, was also an OSCE organization. And through this international forum, which the United States is a party to, we saw that there was a lot of work to get that international forum to accept European Union speech laws as laws, and that they themselves incorporated Islamic laws on slander. Now you're saying, well, what's the European Union's laws on slander, and the OIC in Europe and in Warsaw, Poland have to do with anything? And I'll tell you what it is. They were getting our social media leaders, people, Facebook, Twitter, and the other ones, and YouTube. They were getting them to agree to adopt those speech standards as a hate speech standards. So what I was arguing, and it goes back a couple years now, I actually still have the briefing where I said, watch out, this is coming. I said, you're going to see social media adopt European speech codes, which are antithetical to U.S. First Amendment speech codes, and they're going to impose them on U.S. citizens inside the United States. And as part of that, I said, this will be argued on our side by our friends as, well, that's a private company, they can allow anything in they want. And I said, no. I mean, yes, on one level, that's true. On another level, there's a phrase in law called acting under color of authority. And what that means is, once you can show that maybe these social media entities in America are adopting a foreign speech code and implementing them on Americans inside the United States, they are adopting a speech code that has state action behind it from a foreign entity, and that should be understood that way. So I think this is greatly concerning. I've been screaming that we now have clear indicators that the very hard left, cultural Marxists are in an actual alliance with the Islamist organizations that we're talking about, so that you could see SPLC kind of be friendly with groups like the Muslim Brotherhood in America, and you can see situations from the Klein memo that came out last year. You could see situations where Antifa, which is a hardcore violent Marxist organization, is going to coordinate with groups like the ISIS, and you can see that ISIS kind of, their narrative is the violent splinter of the nonviolent Brotherhood, and you can see Antifa is the violent splitter of the nonviolent SPLC. And what you're seeing is, when you start to see, and this is where you get into something called, and I have to back up a second, when you start to see that there's like a imposition of a different legal standard that is enforced, that becomes something where you have to start thinking in terms of political warfare, PW. And by that, I don't mean Republicans fighting Democrats. I mean, it's the Maoist insurgency model. And what you start to see is something that looks like a counterstate. So that all of a sudden, when you see an American being shut off from the pipelines of communication, when you see that Americans go to have a forum and legally go to a place of a forum, and someone declares that they're haters, and Antifa says they're going to show up and cause violence, you are seeing a counterstate operation imposing and enforcing hostile law on American citizens inside the United States. And this then transitions from something not, and I'm sure you are following, are you not? Mm-hmm. People who have had to say they've had to cancel events because of the threat of violence, right?
Yeah. And what gets me is the great free speech, Berkeley, California, and what was Fresno State had that radical Islamist pro-Sharia Muslim professor saying, that all these bad things about, what was it, Trump or whatever she was talking about. And it was a vile tweet, and they stood behind her.
Barbara Bush.
Oh, Barbara Bush, that's right. But you mentioned SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Many people are saying they have a huge hand in purging pro-American and other people who might be critical of Islam and radical Islam, which I say, quite frankly, is the same thing.
Listen, hold on a second. Erdogan made this very clear. None of us need to be using the term radical Islam. Islam is Islam. Am I not correct, Stephen?
Well, I think that that's what you hear from everybody. I think that you hear from our actual allies in the Middle East, Muslim allies, who really do not want this violence in our country. I think you hear from the people on the other side, where to a voice they say, look, there's no such thing as being a moderate Christian. Just think about this. You are either a believing Christian or you're a non-believing Christian. You're either and then if you're a believing Christian, you're holding up to it, or you're not. The word moderate, what does that mean? I mean, it's a political term applied to a faith, and so what they're going to point out to you is there's no such thing as radical or moderate Islam. There's just Islam. And does this make sense? What I'm saying is the very way we talk about it puts us off kilter to what we're looking at.
Exactly.
And in fact, my argument is the very way we talk about everything having to do with national security today guarantees we can't actually address the issue. And so, yes, I think that that's exactly right. And, your point about Turkey and what's becoming very alarming is I'm just watching where you're starting to see, this is my hypothesis, but I think I could put some data points behind it. The Turkey, and by Turkey, I mean the AKP party, Erdogan's party, the one that basically, I think, through kind of a faux coup, where they actually, purged out the more secular elements of Turkey from their military and their government. I believe that they have, in effect, taken operational control of the Brotherhood in many respects. When Morsi was thrown out and the leadership of the Brotherhood was basically exiled from Egypt, a lot of them ended up in Turkey. And I think that all of a sudden we're starting to see AKP material show up in U.S. Muslim Brotherhood forums. And we're starting to see, for example, that Turkish leaders are coming to America and leading these marches where they get leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in America to swear fidelity to the person of Erdogan. And I'm becoming very concerned that there's a militantization of the domestic Muslim Brotherhood that is in conjunction with the fact that Turkey seems to be taking a leadership role, or at least the AK party in Erdogan.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's very appropriate to bring up Turkey there.
Tell us about your website, unconstrainedanalytics.org.
Well, unconstrainedanalytics.org was set up a couple years ago to address, Unconstrained Analytics, Inc. is a 501, to address issues of national security. And our current focus is on the radical Islamic threat. I use that term because that's just the word they use, the jihadi groups like ISIS and the Brotherhood, but also how they intersect with the hard left. And what I'm working on right now is to show actual alignment of worldview and actual alignment of activities. Unconstrained analytics comes from the original, it's called the IPB manual, Intelligence Preparation of the Battlefield, which became Battle Space and then Environment. But the original IPB manual basically made the point that when you do an intelligence analysis, it must be unconstrained by your own preferences. You basically have to line up the indicators to see what you're looking for, and with data. And if those indicators reveal facts, you have to orient on the facts. And if you come to a point where those facts begin to contradict your beliefs, you have to do what you have to do to further analyze it. But at a certain point, the facts outweigh what you want to believe. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So your analysis must be unconstrained by what you want to think, and you must follow. It's Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. Follow the evidence. And when everything you thought was going to work doesn't work, and the things that do work can be explained by the facts, at a certain point you got to say, "Hey, I'm still uncomfortable with this conclusion, but that is a conclusion, and it is superior to what we think, at least in this respect. It answers all the data points." That's what they say they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, this is something that I'm very uncomfortable with, and given the fact that you spend your life and your time professionally in the world of national security, let me ask you this. How is it possible that the Iran deal that John Kerry and Barack Obama are using as their legacy is not an absolute direct threat to the national security of the United States? Every way I look at it, every way I try to manipulate this thing around and try to digest it, I come back with the same thing. This is an absolute direct threat to the national security of the United States. And if you agree with me on that, why is this not being punished under law?
I'm trying to remember the name of the senator who introduced the bill. It wasn't. Do you remember who it was? I mean,
no, I don't.
Republican.
No, I don't.
And I will tell you, one of my big things is, I said, you don't get to talk about, this was during the Obama administration, you don't get to talk about Obama so long as you have McCain and Lindsey Graham running shotgun on this stuff. And I think that, I'm just trying to remember the name of the senator who introduced the bill in the Senate.
Bob Corker.
Corker. Yes, Corker. I have to tell you that Corker introduced this bill in the Senate, and he's a Republican, and he introduced it to a Republican-controlled Senate, And I remember when this was going on, actually almost spitting angry in discussions on Capitol Hill in some meetings where I was saying, this was a Republican Congress that decided that they were going to give Obama authority, and then they were to make it so that there was no possibility of them overturning it because it would require 60 votes to overturn. And that's a mathematical, in the politics of the Senate, that made it impossible. So what they basically agreed to do, the Republican leadership, is they agreed to absolutely abrogate and deny their constitutional authority and responsibility under Article 1 of the Constitution to monitor treaties. And then they gave it over to a president, and they made it so that it would be 60 votes to turn it over so that any number of Republicans who wanted to oppose Obama afterwards could do it, knowing that that was just theater for their constituents, knowing there was no possibility of it passing. So I will say about Kerry, and I think this has to be understood, whatever you want to say about what Kerry did, there were so many things that were coming out while that was being negotiated, to include Kerry saying something as a breakthrough, and then the Iranians coming out and saying there was no breakthrough. We have no intention of doing this, or we have no intention of doing that. So they were making it clear. They weren't even winking their eyes, the Iranians, that this was all theater, but it was going to be theater that was going to be a huge benefit for them. But the problem I have is our entire national security apparatus, including the Republican leadership, was for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this so outrageous. And so I say this was something that our Republican leadership in the national security space allowed to happen. And until we can't fight the fight against the left, so long as we're taking a ball four on how it happened. Everything we're talking about happened with Republican consent. And
it's disgraceful, Stephen. It's absolutely disgraceful. The Tea Party movement made change. We effected change. And
yes.
And they have absolutely let us down. And Donna and I for years have been saying, we don't care whether you've got an R, a D, an I. Now that we've got the socialist, an S, we've got the Marxist with an M. Let's bring in the communist with a C. We don't care what you've got behind your name, following your name. We will hold you accountable to the best of our ability if you destroy America any further, or if you do things that's gonna prevent the restoration of America. And so I agree with you. These numbnut Republicans are as big, if not a bigger part of the problem, because we expect this out of the Democrat Party. I don't expect it out of somebody that's got an R behind their name.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on what you just said, and I want to bring back the political warfare context, the Maoist insurgency model, and I want to introduce a term called controlled opposition. Because if you properly understand what's happening, when you talk about political warfare or any type of warfare, conventional warfare, you basically say, here's all the pieces on the chessboard that are going to be moving in battle. But which of these chess pieces do you have to destroy on their side, and which chess piece on your side are you going to use to do it? And that's called the defeat mechanism. And the defeat mechanism of America isn't the hard left. It is the party that runs on your issues, knowing full well when you basically say they're cowards or they're feckle, you're missing it. They are the controlled opposition, and they are the people who run on your issue knowing they have no intention of ever doing it and generating majorities and then saying that we're going to fight your fight, knowing they're not going to do it because the defeat will be that America, the Americans who put a majority in the House, a majority in Congress, and a president in the White House so that they have absolutely everything they need right now, so that everything we're talking about right now, Trump became president on January 20th. Every one of these issues, had they been honest and ran on the issues they wanted, would have been resolved by March 1st. And they're not. And they're not even close. Mm-hmm. So what this means is their job is to make you lose faith in America. That's the defeat mechanism. And so long as people say, oh, those cowardly Republican leaders, they're missing the fact that they're the defeat mechanism. Because they're the ones who are doing everything Obama was doing, but saying they're on your side. And you will lose hope in that. And this is about, let's go back to not Republicans versus Democrats, but the political warfare model. This is about something I don't think I've ever seen happen, which is the complete nonviolent disenfranchisement of an entire majority population from their own elements of power and their own organizations.
And they don't care.
Yeah, and it's I am thinking about it, and it's terrifying to think about.
Because
Well,
all they
you
want
see-
is power
but you see,
for themselves.
You just said they don't care. And you see, that again is a language that is providing space. They
No.
do care because they're
I don't
doing
think I'd said they don't care.
No, I
said
did. What I meant was
Donna did.
they don't care about the United States. They care only about
But
themselves.
all I'm saying is, at some point, you have to score what they think by what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is showing a great deal of care. How's that?
Yeah. All right. I see
They're going to
that
stick to
angle.
that.
Well, it's
They're
also
gonna
like
stick.
the people that have said that, Obama was an absolute failure. He didn't fail. He succeeded 100% in everything that he wanted to do because his objective was to destroy America. Transform America,
Yeah.
I should say.
Well, I would say that he was a successful president, but I would say that for the last 2 years, has healthcare been stopped? No. Did we put a Congress in power to stop it? Yes. Did they run on that issue?
Of course they did.
So my only concern is we are being made to look past the immediate issue to the deep issue, and we're losing because of that. And that is that it's a zero. I'm not telling people to go get their guns or become violent or go to show up at civil meetings and become, screaming people. But at a certain point, I think people have to start thinking in terms of what we're really seeing. And to do that, you almost have to detach yourself to the way we talk about politics and, maybe say, if America were a foreign country and I was looking at these movements, how would I look at them? And when you say, well, if we were looking at a foreign country, we would call this an insurgency, but that doesn't happen in America. But when you get to the third time where you say, yes, but that doesn't happen in America, then you have to say, well, maybe it does happen in America. So let's pretend it is happening, and let's see how far we can take this. And I think what's happening right now is people are starting to say, oh, my God. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we're at today. How's that?
Yeah, and it's scary. We're talking with Stephen COUGHLIN. He is an attorney, a decorated intelligence officer, noted specialist on Islamic law, ideology, and other issues as they relate to terrorism and subversion. He's the author of Catastrophic Failure, Blindfolding America in the Face of Jihad. And you can find his website at unconstrainedanalytics.org. That's unconstrainedanalytics, one word, .org. Stephen, could you talk a little bit about the purging of U.S. counterterrorism training by, I think it began under the Bush administration, actually, and then really pushed more by the Obama administration and, of course, John Brennan?
Well, I would have to say, who's the guy doing this? Mueller, yeah.
Mueller, yeah.
Well, I think the purge started under Judge Chertoff when he was head of DHS, where he had some, quote-unquote, Muslim leaders in America who we were able to somewhat associate with leadership of the Brotherhood, come up with this document that basically said, here's the language we can use to analyze Islam and the terrorism, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and all that stuff. And, although they say they fight jihad in order to implement Sharia law, according to Sharia law, we cannot use the word jihad. We cannot use the word Sharia law. We cannot use the word ummah. We cannot use the word caliphate. And it's like, well, DHS was convinced, Judge Chertoff was convinced to not use the language used by the threat when they're doing stuff to us. And that means we can't analyze the actual threat. And they come up with all these sophistic models, usually by some, associate professor from somewhere. And so that's when it started, and that's when we started seeing the word violent extremism and countering violent extremism, which is an academic-sounding model, which we can trace back to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and these international forums. So when you hear our DHS and FBI talk about CVE, this is a foreign import, and we know that. So then you had, and we saw that pop up in a 2008 lexicon from the FBI. Then what happened is Obama came around in 2000 and in 2011, they started purging people and product. And Mueller was the main person doing that at the time. And there's actually testimony of him in Judiciary, House Judiciary Oversight hearings saying it's a purge and going so far as to say that they used 5 SMEs, 3 of them were non-U.S. employees who they then classified so nobody was allowed to know who actually did the purging. And we were able to show that they were very, we were able to inferentially kind of come to the recognition that these were, not good people. Oh, and they were also people who benefited by getting rid of their competition, which made that whole SME private sector thing illegal. So the main purge, you would be right, was in 2011 with when Obama was there, and it was mainly Mueller. However,
and Brennan
and the State Department, but Brennan as well.
Yeah, Brennan converted to Islam when he lived over in the Middle East. Nobody talks about that. These people have one thing in mind, and that's it.
There are people who are making that argument, and they have some data points to suggest it might be true, but I've never actually seen that confirmed.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. But still, I look at the actions just like you say. We have a couple minutes left. If you were advising President Trump, I mean, first of all, to me, we need to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood. It seems like, unfortunately, because we have public opinion, that might be a difficult thing. But if you were advising President Trump, what would you tell him to do in light of all this?
Well, I think what I would do is scream as loud as I could to say that, political correctness is an element, a line of effort in a cultural Marxist assault. And that one of the things that this political correctness does is make it hate speech to say anything that would be called threat analysis and national security. So if I say the Russians are doing something, I'm accused of being a racist for hating Russians. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So we see the total collapse of counterintelligence. We see the total collapse of counterterrorism. And so I would say to the president, you need to stop and you need to start taking an assessment of what's going on, including the reintroduction and the wholesale retraining of counterterrorism and counterintelligence. And you need to stop looking at what's going on with you, this whole Russia investigation, which I think is completely made up. Okay, and it only exists to attack the legitimacy of a president who was lawfully elected. And I would say you need to stop looking at this as politics as usual and see this as something that really is ominous. Ominous for the fact that you see, people use the word deep state. I don't know if that's the term I would stay with, but let's just go with it because that's one people use, where you see the deep bureaucracy of America working overtime to undermine a lawfully elected president of the United States, where the very ability to maintain the Russia conspiracy thing has long since burned off. They can't even really maintain it anymore except in the media. They've had to actually kind of wink and say there's nothing to it.
Morphed into Stormy Daniels. That's pretty much the case.
It's morphed into what they're going to keep morphing it, and that's the whole thing. And doing things like taking a president's attorney and raiding his files. I just can't remember that happening.
I mean, it really is. And it should scare all Americans. That really is the problem. Stephen, unfortunately, we're out of time. Again, folks, find him at unconstrainedanalytics.org. Unconstrainedanalytics.org. Again, Stephen COUGHLIN and his book, Catastrophic Failure, Blindfolding America in the Face of Jihad. It always goes way too fast, Steve, that's for sure. It was so great to have met you at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention, and please keep up the great work.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on your show.
All right. And coming up next, we'll be talking to our reporter from Israel, HAGIT CANARY, and Dan Perkins, who wrote on radical Islam, got 1.3 million views, and then put in Facebook jail. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio. Everyone, I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts, when their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen, who's been behaving himself this show.
Donna, it's the new me.
No, it's not.
I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be the first to welcome you back to this really big Cowboy Logic show that's absolutely riveting, don't you think? I agree with me. Back to you, Donna.
So weird. It's just so weird. Anyhow, our guest this half hour is our good friend from Israel.
Our little sister from another mister.
That would be one Hagit Canary. She's in Tel Aviv now. She used to be in Ashdod in southern Israel, but now she's living in Tel Aviv. Now, Hagit is a brainiac. Again, besides just being our reporter in Israel, and I connected with her when I was at Fox. We started emailing back and forth because obviously it's the middle of the day when I'm working all night at Fox, and we just really drummed up a very nice relationship. And as I got to know her, boy, I mean, you speak like 8 million languages. Of course, your current boyfriend is from Denmark. That's one language you don't speak. But anyhow, when was the last
but by
time?
the end of the week, she will have learned
This
it.
is true. So, actually, out of curiosity, Hagit, you speak, obviously, Hebrew. You speak Arabic. You speak German, right? German.
Russian, Spanish, French. Ladino, which is a Jewish dialect of Spanish, like Latin with Spanish. And I'm undergoing Danish, but don't expect me much because it's difficult. But you always embarrass me when you.
Is that all? Is that it?
But
That's
I
the
wanna
only.
know.
That's the only. That's
I'm
the
still
only
young,
languages that you speak.
The only one.
Oh, and I think we need to let the listeners know, Hagit, that the only time you ever speak English is when you're on Cowboy Logic Radio.
That's what I was going to ask you. When was the last time you actually spoke English?
Last time you called.
And that was last December. I'm telling you, I wrote it down here. It was December 12th of 2017.
Well, and here's another thing, ladies and gentlemen, that you have to understand, and that is that Hagit, our little sister from another mister, is extremely impressed with my Spanish-speaking skills.
Yes.
And what we're going to do right this second for you, ladies and gentlemen, Hagit and I are going to have a little conversation in Spanish. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this in recognition of all of the migrants that have been traveling through Mexico to invade our country from the southern border. So here we go. All right. Hola, Hagit. Hola.
Hola. Hola.
Hola. Hola. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está, Hagit?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Bien, me alegro mucho.
Sí, Hagit. Hagit.
Dime.
Negro camisa, Hagit.
That's what he's wearing, a black shirt.
Yeah, but like what?
Hey, Hagit.
This is all he knows because he used to work in retail in Miami.
Miami, yeah.
Hey, Hagit.
Sí, dime.
Pantalones azul. Muy caliente.
Can we get to Bibi Netanyahu, please?
Cervezas azul pantalones.
We have important information to
Wait a
get
minute.
to.
Hold on a second. We're going to get to the important stuff. Hagit, what did I just say? Cervezas azul pantalones. Negro.
I have no idea. It's like
Cervezas is
service
beer.
black pants.
Cervezas is beer, isn't it?
I think I said my beer is blue and my pants are black.
Because I pronounce it like in Spain. So I'm not used to the Mexican Speedy Gonzalez thing.
Okay.
She speaks good Castilian Spanish as opposed
All right.
to...
Well, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that were absolutely overly impressed with my Spanish-speaking skills and my conversation with the beautiful Hagit Canary, please write us at cowboylogicradio@gmail.com and let us know. If you were offended by that and you need to go find a cry closet or a safe space, screw you.
I want to know how somebody like Hagit knows what Speedy Gonzalez is.
Because they have cartoons in Israel, Donna.
Of course.
All right. Okay.
All right, let's get down to some serious business here.
Now,
Bibi Netanyahu, right?
I want to get down to the nitty-gritty initially. When Barack Obama first went over to Israel, Hagit was in college at the time, and she was one of the students that was there, and she said it was almost like watching a rock star. I mean, it was the cult of personality.
Idol.
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of nuts. And what is the take now in Israel on Donald Trump, especially given the fact that he wants to move the embassy back to Jerusalem?
Well, if you look at the media, there's a lot of circus, also for the Netanyahu thing that he made, and also about they talk about less about Trump, but now they are focused about Netanyahu and his speech and this presentation that he made, which is, from my opinion, they're overreacting, because I think that if you agree with him in his political views or not, he made a great service. The intelligence of Israel made a great service, but they are focusing on this and less about Trump. I also think that it's because in the first place they didn't like Trump, and now Trump is having success with the Koreas, and he having the thing with the agreement of climate change and everything and suddenly Donald Trump becomes like a leader. And the media here is more focusing about putting down Netanyahu than, putting down Trump. It's more easier because they're doing this to Netanyahu all the time. Now, I have to tell to our listeners that I never voted for Netanyahu. I never voted for his party. I have no interest to defend him. But I think that right now he is the only leader that we can lean on. I don't see anybody else. And I think that he really made a great service with the presentation that he made. As for Trump, as I told you in the beginning, I never judged him because he didn't enter to the White House, and I really got angry when people preferred Hillary because they thought that Trump is the lunatic. But eventually, Trump is proving. I think that so far, I don't know if I'm correct or not or wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But everything that so far he said, I think that he's doing everything. I think. So
to me, it's self-preservation. I mean, when you have somebody like Bibi up there, whether you agree with him or not as your leader at this point, you have a presentation with original paperwork that shows Iran wants to do nothing but decimate Israel and the United States, the great Satan and the little Satan. That's what gets me so annoyed, Hagit, with the press here in the United States. They're more worried about Stormy Daniels in a one-night stand among consenting adults than they are over the fact that Iran wants to lob one in here, and so does North Korea. And all of a sudden, that's been stopped and halted. I mean, that is the bottom line, is our safety. And how can you go against something like that with all of this proof? This is what they want to do. Iran has said, we want to kill you. And what does Barack Obama do? Send him $150 billion to put that in a hyperdrive. So
they can pay to kill you.
Right.
Hey,
yeah. So first of all, yes.
I just want to interject one thing, and then I apologize for interrupting. If I lived in a country where there were thousands and thousands of chemical and biological and nuclear and tactical weapons that were aimed at my country, and I had other rogue states that were surrounding me, that were aiming those weapons at me, saying that they want to absolutely extinguish the state of Israel from the planet, I would want nobody other than Bibi Netanyahu as the leader of my country. Now,
exactly.
You can agree with me on that or disagree, but I'll now be quiet and be well behaved.
No, you don't have to be quiet. No, but seriously, this is what the same thing. I have no idea what you were talking about, what the media over there is talking about. But here, the opposition or those who are against Netanyahu, they don't see Iran as a big threat that you must do all this show and talk about this because Netanyahu is talking only about this. This is why he also got elected, because people feel safe. Now, this is I see like similarity between the behavior of your media, the behavior of our media, and even the behavior of European media when, like even people in the European Parliament that saying that Netanyahu didn't say anything new to them. So if it's not new to you and you know that they want to kill us and destroy Israel and wipe us from the map as they threat. This is the quote, what they are saying. So if you know all of that and it's not new for you, why are you still having this agreement? Why France is still insisting to keep this agreement? Why Germany? The same Germany that is obligated to help us as a Jewish state and all the time feeling ashamed from the Holocaust, how all of you are still having this agreement. And they're looking at Trump as the enemy. They're looking at Netanyahu as the clown that's doing the show and everything. Netanyahu is doing his job as the Prime Minister of Israel. Donald Trump is doing his job as the President of the United States. Of course, we have interest, but this is also international interest.
Well, here's the thing. Hey, Hagit, I want to answer a question. You asked a question, or you posed a statement in the form of a question a minute ago. Why are the European countries, why is France, why is Germany wanting to continue this Iran, this absolute failure of a deal with Iran? Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Number one, they're politically correct countries. Number two, they trade with Iran.
Exactly.
They need to keep trading with them when the correct thing to do is say, screw you, Iran. We're going to trade with other countries that aren't interested in extinguishing a fellow country.
And
okay?
if you look politically, you see that the United States is endorsing Israel. It's endorsing Saudi Arabia. And Europe saying, what? And where are we? We need to have some force too. We need to endorse other countries. We need our oils. We need our, thing that Iran has to offer, And as you said, they're politically correct. But let me quote Al Bundy when he says that French are sissies. They are really afraid. They are afraid that if they will lose this agreement, they won't have nothing else. They will lose everything. But it's not working like this, because with this kind of people, you don't speak with diplomacy. We are talking about this all the time that you are interviewing me. They don't understand this diplomacy. They understand the language of Islam. They understand the language of Dawah. They understand the language of Taqiyya, which is manipulating the sinners, the kuffar, in order to get what we want, which is control of all of us.
Taqiyya is essentially what Islam says, lying to us infidels. It's not really lying because we're less than human, so it's okay. Correct?
Yes. So let's do Taqiyya. Let's lie to them. Let's have more bases of nuclear weapons, but they won't know. And today, I think I saw it on TV, our TV, that they show that there is a base where there shouldn't be a base of nuclear weapon, and in Iran. And a satellite took a picture before and after, and they saw a movement that they are building there some kind of a base of nuclear weapon, where they reported that there's nothing there. So they are doing it.
We're speaking with Hagit CANARY, our sister from another mister. She is our reporter in Israel. She sees what's going on. Hagit, this is the Shia and the Sunnis. Basically, yes. It's like the Hatfields and the McCoys with the Muslims. And obviously, Iran would like nothing but Shia law to take over. And Saudi Arabia is like, that ain't happening. So Saudi Arabia, which is more Sunni, is kind of teaming with Israel. And I firmly believe, tell me if I'm wrong, Barack Obama was not. Barack Obama was shifting America to back more like Iran. That's why we had this deal. And the rhinos in D.C., I can't stand these people. Just think, to be nice and get along, go along here is going to, help things. And it didn't. So they okayed that deal. But it started to shift things. And I firmly believe that if Hillary Clinton got in there, Israel would be in very serious problem right now because they wouldn't have any backing.
I would be running away to Antarctica if Hillary Clinton was your president, believe me. But it's beyond. It's not that Saudi Arabia woke one day up and said, "Oh, Israel, they're so nice." No, they have a war with Yemen. I have no idea if you have a coverage in your media. We don't anymore. There is a war in Yemen, which Iran, the same Iran that is having fun in Syria with Russia and everything, they're also trying to control Yemen. And they were launching missiles. Tell me if you have a deja vu. They were launching missiles to Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, which are Sana, they were starting to have missiles in their soil. You have a deja vu from a small country in the Middle East with missiles and everything. This is the thing, the same missiles. So we gave them the Iron Dome for protection, some. And the U.S., your country, is helping them also. Now there's a really deadly war, which is the war they're trying to ignore. We are not, besides giving them protection, we're not giving them weapon or something like this. So they have now a war also against Iran with Yemen. Because Iran is trying to control with something called Houthis with their Shiites. It's like a sub thing over there. So as they do in Syria and Lebanon with Hezbollah, which are their Shia, and in Syria with all this Assad regime, they're trying to take control of the Middle East. And don't forget the same Iraq that you guys try to hamper and give her democracy. Which, by the way, the same country that I was asking why you're having an agreement, they were all the time criticizing your country for trying to have clean here all the mess. They are now majority of Shia.
Yeah, we created a mess with Iraq and Libya too. I mean, it's
your fault. Donna, this is not your fault. I will tell you why. The United States is not the only responsible. It doesn't have the only responsibility in the world. You're not Mother Teresa. This is why I love Trump. I really agree with him enough of that you're the only one who needs to stick your nose and everything. Where's Europe? Seriously, if everybody worked together, I believe that Iraq could be really a great country today. And there are a lot of Iraqis that are supporting Israel. There are a lot of Saudis who are supporting Israel. They write me on Twitter. They tell me we were taught to hate you. We were taught to swear death to you, but now we understand that what kind of country you are. And I even received blessing for our Independence Day from people that we don't have peace with. So there is some kind of a wake-up calling when it comes to Iran. And it's better for me to be a friend with them, with the bad Zionists, than to be with somebody who wants to kill me. And by the way, the whole conflict or war between Sunni and Shia, it's very simple to understand why. I mean, for us, it will be like, you will say, what, for this? You had Muhammad, he had like 4 Khalifa, people who came after him. The reason that they're fighting between each other is because Omar was the 4th Khalifa, and the Sunnah claimed that he used to be before, and Ali was the 3rd Khalifa, and the Shia said that he was like the really true follower of Muhammad, while the Sunnah saying that it's Omar and he should have been before Ali. This is why they're killing each other.
Yeah, it's so deep seated. You know what you mentioned though about how people, even in Iran, the young people, it's got a very young population. They have no chance, and they're trying. Obama didn't help them. It's still, really nothing going on there as far as us helping.
Well, and just this past weekend, I think it was Friday that I read this, John Kerry, Hagit, our former Secretary of State, who brokered and is hoping that his legacy will be this wonderful Iranian deal that he did, that those of us that study this stuff know is an absolute abysmal failure, and it did nothing but help fund terrorism all over the world, but mainly directed right at Israel and the United States. John Kerry is meeting with the Iranians to discuss trying to figure out a way to circumvent and move around Donald Trump and his administration with the European countries. I mean, it's
the deal.
Yeah, we've never invoked the Logan Act, but I think it's time to start looking at that, because this would apply to what John Kerry's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, I think, for me, it's more like serious than Germany and France. I mean, this is somebody who is an American who is causing damage over and over again to you, to us, to everybody, and he doesn't stop. Obama is not there. And by the way, speaking about Obama, I really think he should give back his Nobel Prize and give it to Donald Trump. Seriously.
We were actually thinking that if there ends up being, and this is a big if, but if there ends up being a treaty between North and South Korea, many would think that Donald Trump would then be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. My thought on that is that it probably ought to go to Barack Obama as his second unearned Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, really. Or better yet, if Trump does get the Nobel Peace Prize, watching CNN and MSNBC's anchors'
And our
heads
media
explode.
And European media. You know what? I will tell you something. When Trump had his speech about moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, I was tagged in Facebook by a Spanish contact. I don't know him personally, and he wrote "What do you think about Trump's decision to move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem?" And he tagged me. So I told him, "What do you want me to say? Jerusalem is my capital." And then you see people commenting for friends in Spain that Jews are controlling the banks. That Jerusalem is controlling the world.
The whole nine, blah, 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 blah. Come on, And the thing is, Barack Obama wanted to move the embassy. He just never did. I think Bush said the same thing.
The own promise. And Trump is the only one who took the decision and said, yes, I'm going to do it. But this is not my point. My point is that I wrote them and I said, but Jerusalem is my capital. And Trump didn't decide it. It's not Trump's decision. Jerusalem is our capital, period. And you all search for excuse to blame Trump and hate Trump since the beginning. While your country is still having an economic crisis, while your country is having unemployment, a high percentage of unemployment, and you're searching for the other to, find what's wrong with the other one, you're having a bad, situation. They don't work, they don't have money. Some people talk about go out from the EU, and you're trashing about somebody that you don't even know. So I don't want to see only CNN's face. I want to see everybody's face, because nobody believed him. Yeah. And nobody thought that he will ever do anything serious, and everybody were waiting that he will have mistakes. And so far, he did something in, let's say, I think in a short time, more than all the presidents who tried to talk with the Koreas to have an agreement. Now, if he did an agreement, he tried to even have a handshake with the Koreas. I'm really optimistic with the thing that he can do in the Middle East. Not speaking about Israel, but in general in the Middle East, because this guy has skills of negotiation. He's
done more in a year and a half than other presidents have done in 8 years. And if this keeps up, I venture to say even more so than Ronald Reagan. And that is going to make all of their heads explode. I mean, and my socialist friends that I know from Europe, I keep reminding them they'd be speaking German without us, even though they still hate us. But that's another story.
Exactly.
Well, Hagit, we've already run out of time, and I really do appreciate it. But thank you so much for joining us. Our good sister from another Mr. Folks, Hagit Canary, with the latest from Israel. Love you, honey, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio, we'll be talking to Dan Perkins, who wrote on radical Islam, got 1.3 million views, and then put in Facebook jail. It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. 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 The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. 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 Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Donald Trump came to Washington vowing to drain the swamp and make government work for the American people. But the swamp creatures in D.C. aren't going down without a fight, and the deep state is determined to overturn the election and keep their gravy train rolling. In these turbulent times, it's critical for patriots to stay engaged and be prepared to defend this president. You can stay up to date on Trump's battle to make America great again by listening to America First Radio with Jim Dawes each weeknight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Liberty Feed.
The deep state wants to stop Donald Trump. Now, Jerome Corsi's powerful new book, Killing the Deep State, rips the lid off the secret war against Trump. Killing the Deep State reveals the shocking plot by the FBI, CIA, and NSA to end the Trump presidency. It's already a #1 Amazon bestseller. Newsmax says you can't ignore Killing the Deep State. Get it at bookstores everywhere or check out the free offer. Go online to deepstate411.com or call 800-406-0921.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN. And our very special guest to close the show is making his debut from his cell in Facebook.
Yeah, Donna, hold on a second. I do have Warden Zuckerberg on with me. As much as I despise this human being, I've got him on another line, and we do have clearance to speak with Dan, but we're going to have to make it quick. You're going to have to get right to the point, okay?
That would be one Dan Perkins.
Thank you, Zuckerberg. Thank you so very much.
Making his debut on Cowboy Logic Radio. So let me explain here, Lucy. Dan wrote 4 books on radical Islam. The latest got 693,000 views. Then Dan Perkins wrote a children's book about dementia called Why Can't Granny Remember Me? And when you think about it, how important is that? Because little kids just don't understand that kind of stuff. All right, so that got almost 200,000 views. Okay, then he has something, overall 1.3 million page views on Facebook. And then what happens? Facebook bans him. And we initially called Dan to talk about his books on radical Islam, and as I was talking to him yesterday in the pre-interview interview, this came up. Dan Perkins, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio from your Facebook cell. I mean,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is unbelievable. You have so much to offer. You're a contributor to the Daily Caller, Clash Daily, Life Zet, The Hill, Daily Surge, and Newsmax. You've been on with Reagan Babe. We've had her on our show as well. And I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous that this can happen, and we have no recourse. 1.3 million page views on Facebook. And I guarantee you, because the only time I've ever gotten a heads up on Facebook saying, you better calm down, is when I've written something about Muslims. And you wrote 4 books on radical Islam. So, Dan Perkins, you were in the crosshairs, no doubt about it.
I think you're right. And thank both of you for having me on and giving me an opportunity to talk about this incredible story of loss of freedom of speech in our country.
Loss of freedom of speech, loss of revenue. And do you have any recourse whatsoever? Have you looked into this?
All right, well, hold on a second, Dan. Hold on. Before you answer that question for Donna, let's set the foundation for the listeners so they kind of understand why you're wearing your prison blues and clanging your cup along the bars in Facebook jail. What ended up happening that landed you in Facebook jail, and kind of set the stage for everybody?
I had written, as she said, I've written 4 books. I wrote a trilogy called The Brotherhood of the Red Nile, and it was on Amazon and got 4 and 5 stars, and people liked it. And somebody said to me, well, you could do a Facebook marketing campaign. I said, I've never done one. and they helped me through the process. And so I started to put together a marketing campaign, not on the Brotherhood books. The first marketing campaign was on my second children's book, which came out in December of last year, Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? And it was actually come out between Christmas and New Year's. So in January, I started this campaign, and things just exploded. As your partner said, I got 183,000 page views in 7 weeks. And people were just astonished at that kind of response. It's a great story, a very important story to talk about dementia with 9 to 12-year-old children and their families, because I believe that the grandchildren are the lost generation. When grandparents or aunts and uncles develop dementia, the parents don't know how to explain it to their children, so they ignore it because they become so obsessed of doing the right thing for their mom and dad. So I wrote this book, and people absolutely loved it. And so I had written a trilogy called The Brotherhood of the Red Nile, and it was a story about radical Islam nuclear attack against the United States. And when I finished the third novel, generally when you do a trilogy, there's a third book. After I finished the third book, I got such pushback from people saying, "You can't leave us here." I said, "Yeah, but it's a trilogy." They said, "I don't care. Write another book. Continue the story. We want to see what happens to these people. We're friends. They're family to us." So I wrote a sequel to a trilogy, which is not normal, called Ted Baker and Terrorist Gold. And it's a story about the continuation. And one of the major plot themes in the story is how the Russians co-opt the Democratic nominee for president of the United States at some time in the future, not today. And there's this whole play about how the government's beginning to investigate him, and they're going to the FISA court to get warrants to see what's going on, and on and on and on. And so that book, as she said, got 693,000 page views in about 5 weeks. And I was astounded. Everybody was astounded. I mean, the typical response rate for a Facebook marketing campaign is about 0.9%. The Grammy book got something like 6%. The Terrorist Gold got almost 9%. So on Easter Sunday morning, I released a special offer of all 3 books of the trilogy in an audio format for a single price. And I released it on Sunday morning, Easter Sunday morning, April the 1st. April the 16th, it was shut down. I didn't know it was shut down on the 16th, but the last number I saw on April 15th in 2 weeks was 593,000 people clicked on the ad, and over 120,000 people clicked on the landing page. And I wasn't getting any sales. I couldn't figure out how, with those kind of numbers. So I called my publicist who I was working with, and they said, "Numbers are right. We don't understand." And then they said, "Wait a minute. We just got this notice from Facebook that your rights have been suspended indefinitely. You cannot market any of your books on the Facebook platform." Now, keep in mind that in order to get on the Facebook platform, you must submit advertising copy, images, and videos for Facebook approval before they run. I did all of that. So I can only conclude at the time that they didn't like what I wrote about in the 4 novels. And Zuckerberg said before Congress, while this was all going on, that they have a new appeal process, except I never got any part of the appeal process. They just summarily sent me a note and said, "You don't fit our mold, and you don't do what we want to do, so we're taking your privileges away." So I went to the guy who helped me develop my social media site, and he said, "This is crazy. 593,000 click-throughs in 2 weeks and no orders." So he went to Google Analytics, and he found that on the audiobook, the Terrorist Gold book, the average disconnect time was 8 seconds. And he said, that's 1.2 million people, and they all disconnect in 8 seconds or less? Not possible. There's something else going on. Well, come to find out that they changed their algorithm, and I saw an interview with Tucker Carlson, who talked about Fox News. He talked about the Hill, the Daily Caller, places that I write for, how their feeds from Facebook has dropped maybe as much as 30%. Diamond and Silk were testifying how when people would go to their website, if they wanted to go somewhere else or they were on their Facebook page, people couldn't get there. So they were being blocked. So it really became an issue of free speech, and I wrote a commentary which I hope will get published this week about that experience. But we have, in essence, Facebook deciding the interpretation of the Constitution, and more specifically on free speech.
All right, let me try to wrap my head around everything you just said and see if I can put this into an encapsulated version in layman terms, and then correct me if I'm wrong on this. So you create this ad campaign that you pay for through Facebook.
Yes.
And
you
approved.
You submit it, it's approved, and then you implement it. And part of that advertising campaign is that when a Facebook viewer clicks on this ad, it's supposed to drive them to a website that you can then that the viewer can then click on that website and navigate through it and purchase your books. Am I right so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely dead on.
But what's ended up happening with Facebook and their AI or their just normal team, as Zuckerberg always puts it, what ended up happening is through their algorithms and their AI and their teams that are working on this stuff, the person that is attempting to research your work more and hopefully buy your books is limited to 8 seconds on the site, and then they're incapable of moving any further. Correct?
Yes, that's what my web people tell me.
Okay, all right.
And other people are as I said, Tucker Carlson was doing an interview with people from Fox and the Daily Caller. The Diamonds and Silk also have the inability to have somebody on their Facebook page go someplace else. So it's diminishing their traffic, as in Carlson's talked about in his interview, as much as 30%.
All right.
YouTube
well,
is doing the same thing. YouTube, Twitter, they're all doing the same thing. And from what I hear, the Southern Poverty Law Center is the main fallback. They're the ones who are doing the judging. And obviously, they're totally on the left.
All right, well, let's do something. Dan, let's do something right now. We'll do it a few more times throughout the interview. Let's give out the website where these people can circumvent Facebook and circumvent any type of, First Amendment squashing. They can get to your books. They can order your books. They can find out all about your great work. How do they do that?
If you go to my basic website, which is danperkins.guru, Guru, that will take you to where all the books are and my foundation, Songs and Stories for Soldiers, and interviews, and hundreds of interviews, radio and television, domestic and globally. And if they want to go directly, they can go directly to Amazon.com or any online bookseller, or even in their local bookstore. They can they can see my books online, and they can order them from there or any bookstore.
But they can get it all at danperkins.guru, Guru,
yes,
correct?
Never heard of that
That's
kind
correct.
of website. Sounds cool. Maybe it's safer.
All right, we're going to give that out to you folks a couple of more times throughout this interview with Dan.
I want to get Dan. Give us a little bit on your background on the work you've done with radical Islam and researching that.
I wrote the trilogy, which the first book is The Brotherhood of the Red Nile, A Terrorist Perspective. I wrote that because I believe that the American people know squat about the Muslim faith. I do 40 to 60 radio and television interviews a month. And I would ask you the same question. I don't ask it anymore because it's always the same answer. But I would ask you, since I'm the first time on your show, what percentage of your audience, and you're not being judgmental, you're just answering as best you can, what percentage of your audience have read any part of the Quran or Sharia law?
I would say a very, very small percentage. I would think that the majority of our audience is relying on the subject matter experts that we bring on to the show people like Claire Lopez, John Guandolo, yourself, Dr. Jim Mitchell, you know, these types of individuals that have years and years and years and years of training and knowledge in Islam so that they are able to deliver more of a layman's translation and interpretation of the Quran. Because quite frankly, you know, that's where I get my knowledge. I don't have the time to sit down and read the Quran. I do have the time to listen to subject matter experts that we vet. So I would say, to answer your question, a very small percentage, although I would also flip that coin over and tell you that the listeners that you're talking to right now are very well educated, and they're educated by people we consider to be subject matter experts just like yourself.
And let me take it a step further, because they know what Sharia law is, and they know the Constitution is not compatible with Sharia law. And actually, on the same show, Dan Perkins, we have a friend of ours from Israel who reads Arabic, and obviously she's fluent in English, in Hebrew, Arabic, Spanish, Russian and French, okay? And she has read the Quran both in Arabic and in English, and she said it says two different things because the infidels have to be kind of left in the dark. And I believe that the Muslim Brotherhood totally needs to be outlawed in this country, and they are not bringing Donald Trump up to snuff on this. And obviously, Barack Obama knew that very well.
Yeah. There's one, if I could offer just a little educational point that your audience may not be aware of. We don't understand that I should say, we have a perception that America's greatness came from its melting pot philosophy, that people came here because they wanted a better life, and so they realized that in order to have a better life, they had to assimilate into the culture. They had to learn the language, the laws, the currency, and the customs. That's called assimilation. In fact, we as a nation put a significant restrictions on immigration from 1929 to 1962, and that was called the period of assimilation. It was a period because of the huge immigration we had prior to the stock market crash in 29. The late 1800s to early 1900s, the government and the people decided we needed to allow those people to get into the culture and join America. So we severely restricted. What people don't understand is that the Quran, which we're talking about, specifically prohibits the assimilation of Muslims with Christians and Jews. So those people on the left who think that by allowing Muslims, true believers, to come into the country, they will assimilate into our culture, they're misguided. And let me give you an example. Minneapolis, Minnesota, and most of the state of Michigan, they are developing enclaves of Muslim people, segregated away in an enclave where only Muslims, believers, live in those communities. And they try and govern by Sharia law, and they do not allow state and local government officials or services into those communities. It is exactly how the Muslim people in France are subdividing the country, because they create these enclaves more and more and more, and they're subdividing the country of France and Germany. They're trying to do it in Italy. They're trying to do it here. 4 years ago, I wrote a national piece. Now think about this for a second. I wrote a national piece exposing that in the city of Irving, Texas, the local government officials permitted the establishment of a Sharia court, so that there were Muslim judges who were trying cases in the Sharia court, and when questioned, will they follow the Constitution or Sharia law in their decisions, they said Sharia law. I wrote that. It got exposure nationally, and eventually the city fathers, who didn't understand what the hell they were doing when they allowed it, got rid of it. But my point is that we are a trusting nation, but we don't understand, in the case of this Muslim faith, how the Quran is used against what it is we believe as a nation.
You know, what really gets me is then you get the thing, oh, it's homegrown terrorists. every time, in fact, there was one that was squashed last week. The guy was, a couple generations in from Afghanistan or wherever, but he spoke obviously perfect English, and they squashed some sort of terrorist attack that he was going to do. And it's not radical Islam, in my opinion, Dan Perkins. It's Islam. Because this, as you just said, is what the Quran tells us. And can you speak a little bit about why a country that's so open, like Western civilizations, don't learn from their mistakes? I mean, this is what the Crusades were formed against. And then you have people like Hitler back in World War II aligning with the Muslim Brotherhood. Is it all about control? And that's why the Democrat Party embraces this?
I think that's part of it. I also think that Europe, and I've said this in many, many commentaries that I've written, the challenge with Europe and the problem they're still having today is that they're trying to govern on a basis of political correctness. And the Muslim faith doesn't work in political correctness.
No, it doesn't at all.
So if you're as a government, you're constantly making concessions because the things that you want to do. I wrote my first children's book called Peter the Little Irish Seal. It's based on Irish and Celtic mythology that goes back to at least the 5th century. It's about a special mythical character called a selkie, which is a seal that has the ability to come on land, shed its skin, and become human and live. I wrote that because my daughter-in-law of my youngest son is of Irish descent. And when they were first married, they would go back to Ireland and visit her family on a regular basis. They're back there now with their son, Peter. And the message I kept hearing when they came back is that the Muslims are trying to change our history and our culture. And that's what they do. They want to change it over to the Muslim faith, Quran, and Sharia law. So I wrote this book for Peter to preserve some of his Celtic history so he understood what was going on in his nation, where his family is from. I wanted to preserve for posterity some Celtic history because they were very concerned that it was being destroyed. That's what they do when they come in. They come in and take over a country.
Yeah.
And never forget the image when the Lord Mayor of London was a Muslim, and standing next to him the day he was installed was a woman with a handmade white placard which said, "Sharia coming to London."
Yeah. What got me is Barack Obama, when he first really got in office, talks about how Muslims contributed to the space program and this and that. I'm going, what the heck? How many Muslims died in World War II for America? How many died? How many fought in the Civil War? And exactly how many were in NASA that, put men on the moon? I mean, this is insanity how they're trying to rewrite things. But Dan Perkins, let me just reintroduce you here. Folks, he's in Facebook jail because he had at least 1.3 million page views on Facebook talking about radical Islam, and they don't like it. And we're going to try to find out why that's the case and what we can do about it. But you can get his stuff at danperkins.guru. That's danperkins.guru, Guru, or on Amazon. And Dan, we only have a couple minutes left, and this kid's book that you wrote is so important about dementia. Why can't Grammy, is it Grammy or Granny remember me?
Why can't Grammy
remember me? And that's so important because it is such a huge problem.
Well, our family was touched by this.
Exactly. Why can't Granny remember me? Talk about that a little bit.
I wrote the book because, according to the New York Times, this is 2 years ago, they decided that the best book, the gray lady decided that the best book on dementia for children was written in 1984. And I said, no, there's got to be something different. And you go back and read the 1984 book, which was written by Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife, Maria Shriver, in 1984. It's a nice book, but what I've done is I've taken the subject matter and I've changed the whole approach to writing to 9 to 12-year-old children. I write as a mystery, and what happens is that we have two little girls who live next door to each other, Hudson and Charlotte, and they've been given a gift that they have the ability to find things that are lost. Not only in their houses, but the whole neighborhood comes to Hudson and Charlotte if something gets lost. So they say to their dads, we'd like to start a business, and it's Hudson and Charlotte, so we want to call it H&C Lost and Found. If you lose it, we can find it. And the fathers chuckle and they say, okay, we'll do that. So the girls say, well, we need an office. So in Hudson's backyard, there's a big oak tree. You could kind of build a combination playhouse and office. So they said, okay, we'll do that. So they sit down on a weekend and they make a bunch of flyers and posters because they don't have any money to advertising. So the dads take them down after school on Monday and they put up all the flyers and the posters and the handbills. They go back and they sit in their office and they're sure that people are going to come. And the first week, nobody comes. Second week, nobody comes. Third week, nobody comes. And they say, well, maybe everything that's been lost has been found. Fourth week, there's a knock at the door. A young man by the name of James. He said, my dad says that the reason why my Cammy can't remember me is because she's lost her memory. And your flyer says you find things that are lost. Can you find my Grammy's memory?
Wow.
They have no idea what he's talking about. But they start a journey with their dads to try and understand what is dementia. And it's a story about how they become educated based on their father's experience and what they read about what happens to somebody when they have dementia. Wonderful illustrations. And at the end of the book, there are 12 activities that families can do together to start today. The day they read the book, they can start to begin to preserve the memory of who Grandma and Grandpa was for future generations.
Well,
and
Dan,
so the reaction is...
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The reaction has just been phenomenal all over the world.
I can vouch from experience, don't play poker, okay? That's all I can say. I'll leave it at there for your folks to try to figure that one out. But yes, danperkins.guru. Yeah, it's strip
what a
poker,
phenomenal
folks.
book.
Thank you. A great
thank
idea.
you, sir, for writing that book.
I got a lump in my throat listening to you talk about it because obviously
we can relate to
with
it.
my mom.
Thank you.
Again, don't play poker.
We've got 7.5 million people. 7.5 million people with dementia, and the Alzheimer's Association says by 2050 we'll have 50 million people in America with dementia.
danperkins.guru. That's where you find his work, folks. danperkins.guru. Books on radical Islam, put him in Facebook jail, but this all-important children's book on dementia. Folks, please look it up, danperkins.guru, or find him on Amazon. Dan Perkins, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio. And we leave folks with a quote from Voltaire. It's dangerous to be right in matters where established men are wrong. I thought that was pretty apropos. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week, and God bless America.